Let's jump right into this explainer because this is something that affects almost all of us. Nobody just wakes up one morning and decides, I'm going to stop believing in myself today. It doesn't work like that. What we're unpacking right now is how confidence actually vanishes. And spoiler alert, it isn't through some massive, catastrophic failure. Actually, it vanishes through really small, almost invisible daily choices. It happened quietly, gradually. I want you to just take a second and really let that sink in. This erosion of your self-belief, it wasn't a single dramatic event. It was a slow, steady accumulation of habits. We're talking about subtle choices you've made so often, you've probably just stopped noticing them entirely. And here's the really tricky part. Society actually praises these very behaviors. From a young age, we're told that being agreeable, being incredibly humble, always keeping the peace, or working twice as hard just to make up for feeling inadequate, we're told these are virtues. We are rewarded for them. But that praise totally masks the real damage these habits are quietly inflicting on your nervous system day after day. Section 1. Betraying your own trust. Let's look at how abandoning our own boundaries sets the perfect stage for deep self-doubt to creep in. That brings us to behavior number 1. Tolerating things you explicitly said you wouldn't tolerate. Think about every single time you set a boundary, maybe you just whispered it quietly to yourself, and then you let it dissolve the second you felt a little social pressure. Well, every time you accept treatment that you previously decided was unacceptable, your confidence literally shrinks. Why? Because your fundamental self-trust is being systematically undermined. Your brain is keeping score, and it's logging evidence against you. Which leads to this absolutely devastating truth. Your word means nothing, even to you. That is a heavy thing to sit with, I know, but it's so critical to understand. Your confidence isn't about controlling the people around you. It's tied entirely to keeping small, honest commitments to yourself. Holding a boundary just once is worth infinitely more to your self-belief than loudly announcing 10 boundaries that you just end up abandoning. Okay, moving to the second behavior, explaining yourself to people who aren't asking. Have you ever caught yourself doing this? You make a decision and suddenly you're listing off reason after reason to justify it to someone who didn't even ask for an explanation. Now, in the moment, it feels like you're just being a good communicator, but underneath, it's actually an unconscious plea for their approval. The brilliant Dr. Harriet Lerner calls this low self-authority. It's this deep unconscious belief that your decisions are only truly valid if someone else comes along and confirms them for you. So when you're constantly over-explaining, you're actively weakening your confidence. You're essentially telling your own brain that your judgment alone just isn't enough. You are asking for permission, retroactively. When you feel that sharp, anxious impulse to over-justify a choice you've already made, you need to hit pause. You have to ask yourself a really hard question. Are you genuinely serving the relationship through clear communication, or are you just desperately seeking approval for a choice that belongs entirely to you? Section 2. Shrinking and deflecting praise. This is where we look at how we actively prioritize other people's comfort over owning our own success. Behavior 3 is shrinking in the presence of strong opinions. Picture this. You have a perfectly clear view on a topic, but the very moment someone else confidently states the exact opposite, you find your own position immediately softening. You hedge your words. You back down. And it's not because they made a brilliant argument. It's because the disagreement itself just feels too dangerous. Doing this reflexively trains your mind to treat your own instincts like they're just rough drafts. I really want you to hear this clearly. You are allowed to hold your ground. You are completely permitted to look at someone and say, I hear you, but I see it differently. You do not have to shrink yourself down just to make room for someone else's certainty. And that ties right into behavior 4, which is deeply rooted in what psychologist Pauline Clance identified as the imposter phenomenon. She discovered that chronic self-minimization, it isn't actually modesty at all. It's a defense mechanism. We do it to protect ourselves against the expectation of future failure. It's literally self-sabotage, cleverly disguised as humility. We see this play out constantly in behavior 4, completing tasks privately and then minimizing the results publicly. You know the drill. You work incredibly hard, but the second praise rolls in, you deflect it. Oh, it was just luck, or my team really did the heavy lifting. By refusing to own your competence, usually because you're terrified of looking arrogant, you actively block the internal accumulation of real, genuine confidence. When you dismiss the evidence, the confidence cannot build. It really is that simple. True confidence absolutely requires you to internalize the evidence of your own capability. If you systematically throw away every single piece of proof that you are competent, well, your confidence has absolutely nothing left to stand on. Section 3. The illusion of readiness. Here, we're going to examine the completely false beliefs we hold about preparation and how we compare ourselves to everyone around us. So, psychologist Leon Festinger has this concept called social comparison theory, which demonstrates that humans are just hardwired to evaluate themselves through comparison. We all do it. But the major catch here, the comparisons we make are almost never equivalent. And this perfectly explains the painful trap of Behavior 5. Behavior 5 is comparing your incredibly difficult internal experience to everyone else's polished exterior. You are taking your messy process, your private, churning anxiety, and you're comparing it to their edited, filtered, final presentation. Newsflash, everyone has private doubts, but you completely miss that fact and fail to realize that they felt the exact same fear you're feeling right now before they took action. To break out of this cycle, we have to look at psychologist Albert Bandura's concept of self-efficacy. He proved that the absolute strongest predictor of believing you can do something isn't feeling perfectly prepared. Not at all. It's having the experience of having done something similar in the past. Which perfectly sets up our sixth and, honestly, perhaps the most widespread myth of all, waiting until you feel ready before you begin. Listen, waiting to feel prepared is like waiting for confidence to just miraculously arrive in the mail from the outside. It's completely backwards. Confidence is built in the doing, not in the preparing. Action is the sole manufacturer of confidence. The actual felt sense of capability develops exclusively through the repeated experience of attempting things. Your action doesn't have to be massive. It absolutely does not have to be perfect. It just has to happen. Section 4. Your confidence is worth protecting. As we close out this explainer, we really need to shift our focus from just observing these deeply ingrained survival mechanisms to actually consciously moving past them. I want to deeply reassure you right now. Having these habits does not make you weak. Every single one of them developed for a very real reason. There were solutions to past problems, maybe social dynamics, relationship issues, or just plain emotional survival. They served a purpose once, but right now, they're costing you. Making the shift requires you to recognize the behavior. Absolutely do not judge yourself for it, and gently, slowly, begin choosing something different. You have to unlearn the habit. Because at the end of the day, your confidence is worth protecting. You owe it to yourself to stop the slow, quiet erosion and start building back your self-belief. And you do that one small, kept promise to yourself at a time. As we wrap up today, I want to invite you into an active reflection. Seriously, which of those 6 behaviors felt the most familiar to you? Identify your patterns right now and ask yourself, what would actually happen if you kept just one small promise to yourself tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Now, go take some action.